We met with President Zelensky at the presidential palace. We had a very far and wide-ranging interview about many topics. One of the things that he addressed in English, most of his remarks were in Ukrainian, which obviously we will translate. But one of the things he said in English had to do with what the CIA director just said yesterday, which was that the United States is on the lookout for any possible use born out of desperation by Putin of tactical or low-yield nuclear weapons. So here is what President Zelensky had to say to that.
The director of the CIA warned that he's worried Putin might use a tactical nuclear weapon in this fight. Are you worried?
Not only me. I think all of the world, all the countries have to be worried. Because you know that it can be not real information, but it can be truth. Because when they begin to speak about one or another battles or involve enemies or nuclear weapons or some chemical issues, chemical weapons, they should do it. They could do it. I mean, so they can. For them, life of the people is nothing. That's why we should think, not be afraid. I mean, not be afraid, be ready. But that is not the question to Ukraine, and not only for the Ukraine, for all the world. I think so.
The Moskva, the one that Ukrainian soldiers told to F off, sank. The Russians say, and the Russians are liars, but the Russians say it sank on its own. Can you offer some clarity and evidence as to what happened to that ship?
We know that it does not exist anymore. For us, it is a strong weapon against our country. So its sinking is not a tragedy for us. I want you, the rest of the people, to realize that. The less weapons the Russian Federation that attacked our country has, the better for us. The less capable they are. This is important. And about what happened to it, the history will tell.
Do you have any idea how many Ukrainian soldiers or Ukrainian civilians have been killed?
I know about...
How many?
As of now, based on the information we have, because it's very difficult to talk about civilians, since south of our country where the towns and cities are blocked, Kherson, Berdyansk, Mariupol, further east, the area to the east where Volnovakha is. We just don't know how many people have died in that area that is blocked. Let's take Volnovakha as an example. Volnovakha, as other towns, are empty. They are all destroyed. There are no people there. So it's difficult to talk about it now. As to our military, out of the numbers we have, we think that we lost 2,500 to 3,000. In comparison with the Russian military, who lost about 19 to 20,000.
Втратили в порівнянні з російськими військами, які втратили десь 19-20 тисяч. Це от таке порівняння.
That's the comparison. But we have about 10,000 injured. And it's hard to say how many will survive.
I'm sure you have seen the video of the Ukrainian mom finding her son in a well. And her sorrow, her crying, just is devastating to hear. And you have seen a lot of videos like that. What is it like for you, as the president of this country, to see those videos, to hear the crying of the moms?
Найстрашніше, що я бачив в житті, в принципі.
This is the scariest I have seen in my life in principle.
Як батько, перш за все, мені дуже...
I look at this first of all as a father. It hurts so much.
Я навіть все одно, я навіть не зможу до кінця уявити це.
It's a tragedy. It's suffering. I won't be able to imagine the scale of suffering of these people, of this woman. It is a family's tragedy. It's a disaster. It's the dreams and the life you've just lost. We live for our kids. That's true. Kids are the best we were given by God and by family. It is a great pain for me. I can't watch it as a father, only because all you want after this is revenge and to kill.
І після цього хочеться тільки
I have to watch as the president of the state where a lot of people have died and lost their loved ones. And there are millions of people who want to live. All of us want to fight, but we all have to do our best for this war not to be endless. The longer it is, the more we would lose. All these losses will be just like that one.
You can see the entire exclusive interview with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky on State of the Union. That's Sunday morning at 9 o'clock Eastern and again at noon Eastern. Let's discuss just that part of it with CNN Chief International Correspondent Clarissa Ward. Clarissa, thanks for joining us. So what do you think about his answer about viewing the sorrows of this war as a father versus as a president? The notion that as a dad he would want revenge, but as a president, he has to think differently. I thought that was interesting, almost like he's talking himself through this relatively new profession he now has.
Yeah, and I think it really speaks to his humanity and to his openness. You know, it's such a stark contrast when you look at President Zelensky and you see how he was with you. He's very casual. He's unpretentious. He's open. There's no massive entourage. He's dressed casually as sort of befits the moment. He answers you sincerely. He talks about his feelings as a father. And this is something that's been a huge part of his success, his ability to connect with Ukrainians as a human being. And then you look at, on the other hand, President Putin, whose family we never see, whose family we know very little about, except what's been revealed by investigative journalists, who is cold and only talks to people at the end of 20-feet tables, who has a sort of cruel, dead-eyed expression. And you see such a huge difference between the type of leadership. And I do think it's easy to understand that conflict that Zelensky is talking about there, where as a father and as a human you want revenge, but as a president and as a leader you have to make very tough decisions about what is the quickest way to put a stop to the bloodshed. What is the best way to end the war? Do you want to see it protracted and dragged out? Do you try to stop it sooner by making concessions? And this, for any leader in a sort of arena of conflict, is, of course, the toughest decision to make, Jake.
Yeah, and he also said it's so important that this war isn't endless because of these horrific atrocities we're seeing. So many people being killed, innocent civilians. But, you know, that desire comes amidst European officials telling CNN that U.S. officials and their allies are increasingly assessing that there is no short-term end to this in sight at all.
And it's such a stark sort of contrast from the beginning of this war, when we were watching the invasion unfold. The expectation from most officials in the U.S. certainly was that Kyiv would potentially fall in a day or two. That hasn't happened. The war grinds on. We've got this massive offensive poised to begin in earnest any moment now, and it's a very ambitious offensive from the north, from the east, from the south. Russian forces are going to be facing really stiff resistance. And what we've seen as well that I think wasn't anticipated is that potentially Ukraine has a chance of actually winning this war. And obviously, for a leader like Volodymyr Zelensky, that is very appealing, the possibility of an outright victory, particularly against an adversary like Russia, which is much larger and has a much more sophisticated military. And yet, you have to weigh that allure of that potential victory at some point in the distance against the losses that will be incurred as a result of allowing this conflict to grind on. U.S. officials, as you mentioned, talking about this potentially lasting through the end of the year. That is much, much longer than anyone had anticipated. And you can only expect the sorts of scenes that we have really only witnessed in social media videos and from satellite images that have taken place in cities like Mariupol, where thousands are believed to be dead, where maternity hospitals have been decimated, that you're going to see more of that playing out across the country as the second offensive gets underway. And so it comes back to that point again, that constant push-pull, that tension between wanting to end the war, not wanting to concede an inch, but also really wanting to preserve innocent life to the best of his ability.